Welcome back to the Ancient World podcast, where we look at the beauty and wisdom of the ancient times. Thank you so much for tuning in and enjoy the show. All right, everybody. So now we're back with a new episode. And today we have with us Sean from Texas, our good friend and mythology YouTuber with the channel Mythos Logos. So Sean, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It is a pleasure. I love diving into the ancient world with all of your projects, and well, for the upcoming series we have going on some classic epics that are the foundation of at least the ancient Western tradition. I think it's very fitting, and I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, I am also super excited, and thanks so much for taking the time as well. And I just, when you told me that you're making a 3-part series now, 3 videos on the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the Aeneid, and the way you're going to approach it, I was just super excited. So I think we're just going to start with that. Like, if your thoughts about how you're going to do this and your approach to these epics.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So this actually started when I had quite some time ago done an episode on Anchises, who is the father of Aeneas, subject of the Aeneid, Virgil's epic. And there's a scene that has really been coming back to me lately when, during the Trojan War, Aeneas is on the Trojan side, and when the famous or infamous Trojan horse allows the Greeks to infiltrate the city and the city is burning, Aeneas has to carry his father, Anchises, out of the burning city. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is just such a powerful image in terms of it's the end of the world, and he is going forward to try and create something brand new. And what is he going to create from it? And I'd had that in the back of my mind for quite some time, but Virgil, writing the Aeneid, was very much working in Homer's tradition of the Iliad and Odyssey, which had come before. And I've always enjoyed the Odyssey, one of my favorite stories. There's a film version that was made in the 90s that would always be on late night cable TV here in the States. And oftentimes it was just so exciting and really opened up a lot of the world of these mythical, magical creatures and incredible journeys. And the Odyssey's always fascinated me. But the Iliad, the first of them, had always been a little bit less approachable, I found, at least for me personally. Mm-hmm. So, and the Iliad is long and it tells the story of a war, but it's interwoven between these various scenes of battle and of characters. And it had always been tough for me to find a narrative there. And going into it with the other 2 poems that I'm more familiar with, I kind of set the goal of, let's understand this whole tradition using as a bouncing off point what I already do know. So that's kind of my mission going into this 3-part series.
Yeah, that's a great way of approaching it. I have a bit the same feeling with the Iliad, that it's a long war. It lasts for 10 years, and it's more like an action-packed epic. I know they also sometimes say like the Odysseus is more like the he goes on the journey. He's more the intellectual life in a sense, while Achilles is more just like strength, war, and that action part of it. So yeah. So what have you found so far? Like what are your like highlights so far in your discovery?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right that the action-packed kind of idea was definitely my first impression, and that made it a little hard to find the symbolism, the emotional connections in my first impression. But then what I did is went through from the beginning, and the very introduction to the Iliad, it's not some battle scene, it's not invoking the muse to tell the Trojan War, even though it is the story of the Trojan War, but it is rage. Sing, goddess, the muse, of Achilles' rage, black and murderous, that cost the Greeks incalculable pain, pitched countless souls of heroes into Hades' dark, and left their bodies to rot as feasts for dogs and birds, as Zeus's will was done. Begin with the clash between Agamemnon, the Greek warlord, and godlike Achilles. Which of the immortals set these two at each other's throats? So, from the very beginning, it's actually telling you itself what the subject of this poem is, which is Achilles' rage, this emotion, this conflict of his pride against Agamemnon, who is the military leader of the Greeks, and Achilles, the greatest warrior. Not just told through battle scenes or strategy, and it doesn't even start with the beginning of the war, but it starts with Achilles' anger and rage. So that's where I went to focus on thinking, okay, I wanted to really focus in on what is the emotional core of the Iliad? What is the rage that's driving it through? And what's the role of these gods when it says which gods had put this in their hearts? I find that a very interesting question to be asking.
It's I noticed in the Aeneid, like wrath is also very important. I mean, wrath sets the action in some sense into motion as well. It's the wrath of the gods, of Juno, like the wife of Jupiter, who, well, she creates a storm. She tries to sink the fleet of Aeneas, and they have to seek refuge in Carthage in the north of Africa, and then that's kind of the starting point, and then Aeneas tells the story. But the wrath of Juno is kind of a question in the opening as well, like what caused it. But it's also you have a couple of when he is so Aeneas, when he is fleeing from, or when Troy is burning down, he sees Helen, and he, in his view, Helen is the culprit of the whole war of Troy and kind of the reason for the fall of Troy. So he wants to kind of go after her and destroy her. And then he's stopped, and then you have the gods. And then his mother, Venus, intervenes and tells him, like, calm down. There are more important things to do. Like, rein in your wrath. And I'm just mentioning it because it's, I've been so much into the Inferno and about your passions and your emotions in the first book of the comedy, and how that is what the dangers with that. And how half of Inferno is about like unchecked emotion and passions run wild with any kind of balancing with reason. So that's the big warning in Dante, and you also see it so clearly in the Aeneid. Like that's the temperance part. So
you can tell it's a Roman story for sure, and that it sounds very stoic in some ways.
Exactly.
But the maintenance of emotions, the self-control. But I even find that reminds me almost verbatim of something from, again, this first chapter of the Iliad. It is so essentially the event that sets this off is Agamemnon, the warlord, the head general of the Greeks, had taken a woman as a war prize who was the daughter of a priest of Apollo. So the priest is saying, hey, can you please give her back? It's a ransom. It was really primarily historically done as, okay, we'll capture someone and treat them well, and then you can give us money to give them back to you. And that would be a lot of what perpetuated the war, what the funding was. But Agamemnon does not want to let her go, and it's thought of as a front against hospitality and against divinity and against the proper conduct of war. So Achilles ends up convincing Agamemnon to let her go back to her father, and Agamemnon says, oh, okay, but I'm going to take your war prize. And he goes to take a woman that Achilles had claimed going to a city. And it's that is their rage, these two men fighting over the spoils of war, so to say, that starts it. And there's a point in the very introduction here when they're arguing, and Achilles is ready to draw his sword and just attack Agamemnon on the spot. But then here it says, here we go. Achilles' chest was a rough knot of pain twisting around in his heart. Should he draw the sharp sword? that hung by his thigh,